right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, John Iadarola with you guys. In the second hour, Brett Ehrlich and Margaret Cho will be joining us, named one of the top 50 stand-up comedians in the world by Rolling Stone. So looking forward to having her on, and we're going to discuss some issues that I'm sure that she has strong opinions on.
Including whales.
Yeah, I hope we get to whales. Whales is fun. Okay, I also have strong opinions. I don't know if you guys know that. First of all, on Nikki Haley, which we're going to do in a minute, I have a theory. And something that is certain that is not being talked about in the press, okay? So we'll get to that in a sec, okay? And then later in the program, Fox News creates a conspiracy theory. Donald Trump immediately latches onto it, as does almost the entire Republican Party. And so we're off to the races, yet another conspiracy. And I don't know, within the context of that story, we might even discuss how I now agree with Hillary Clinton on a position. Whoa, okay. So
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, so life is fascinating. I kind of
Wall Street or?
No, not on Wall Street. But oh, wait a minute, kind of. I mean, there's a quote that I liked about that. So this new Hillary, that's like way more aggressive progressive, is a fascinating one. And maybe we can get her to host a show here. Anyway, Aggressive Progressives, co-hosted by Hillary Clinton and Jimmy Dore. Now that would be a show you would watch.
And every atom of the universe begins floating apart from each other.
So anyways, lots of fun and exciting stuff. And as always, of course, if you miss any portion of the show, luckily there's membership where you can get all of it anytime you want. Basically like a video podcast, download it, stream it, do anything you like with it, and get our 17 other shows that are part of the TYT network at tyt.com/join. Become a member and build a home of progressives.
So before we launch on Nikki Haley, I did want to say you mentioned that you're going to have a theory for Nikki Haley, but you had a big prediction that you are running out of time on. I don't know if you remember. By midterms, something big was supposed to happen.
Oh yeah, no. There's 27 days left, and I said that Trump would be out of the White House before the midterms. Okay. That is looking perilous at this point.
I was having a talk with Brett Ehrlich, and I said to him, if Robert Mueller hadn't been seen in 2 weeks, would we even know? He's so secretive. Do you have any idea where he is?
Yeah, no, apparently in the Bahamas, because up and at him, dude, you were supposed to come out with the results before the election so that I could be right. Anyways, maybe we'll talk more about that in a post game, another privilege of membership. And later today, super last thing, and then we got to get to the stories. Fascinating interview that the members can watch live and about 24 hours before everyone else. Kevin DeLeon is going to come into the studio.
What?
9:30 p.m. Eastern. Fascinating.
You said his name.
Okay, obviously Alison Hartson ran against DeLeon and Feinstein in the California primaries. Feinstein and DeLeon advanced, and so now DeLeon joins us at the Young Turks. It should be interesting, so don't miss that. And on super duper last thing, on Rebel headquarters, we're gonna have tonight a guy running for mayor of Chicago that I think is super exciting. Like, I'm really jazzed about this guy, and I think he could be a leader for the future based on what he's already done. So don't miss that either. Okay.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Okay.
That's awesome. Okay, well, why don't we jump into it?
Yep.
President Trump's ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, has resigned this morning, surprising seemingly everyone except the apparently 2 to 3 people that she had clued into this. And if you believe him, Donald Trump, who says he's known about it for about 6 months. Believe him if you choose to. But here is the president talking about Nikki Haley moving on.
Nikki Haley, ambassador to the United Nations, has been very special to me. She's done an incredible job. She's a fantastic person, very importantly, but she also is somebody that gets it. She has been at the United Nations from the beginning with us, right from the beginning, and worked with us on the campaign. It's been really a long time, very intense, and she told me probably 6 months ago, she said, you know, maybe at the end of the year, at the end of a 2-year period, but at the end of the year, I want to take a little time off. I want to take a little break. And that was really the thing I think she did best at the United Nations. She got to know the players. She got to know China, Russia, India. She knows everybody on a very first-name basis, and they like her. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, he thinks the world of Nikki. And so we're all happy for you in one way, but we hate to lose. Hopefully you'll be coming back at some point, but you want to just, in maybe a different capacity. You can have your pick.
I like the last part. It was like, maybe you'll come back in some capacity.
Yeah. So I have so much to say, and then we got more clips for you guys. So first of all, I felt like her eyes were dying inside. Like, oh, Pompeo and her get along great. No, they don't. She's like, dying inside. Okay, we're gonna get to her in a second and why she left. Of course, then it's impossible not to be entertained by the buffoon that is our president. She got to know all the players well, China and Russia and India. Well, if you're our ambassador to the United Nations and you don't know those three, it's a really low bar. I thought he was gonna be like, oh, the thing that she negotiated with Botswana and Chile and Tonga, and she put that coalition together in a way I didn't expect. Okay, that's an interesting case to make. Turns out she knows China and Russia and India. Of course she does. I mean, you can't brag about that. It's a crazy thing to brag about. Okay, I'm gonna get to relevant stuff in just a second, but first, I have to make one other silly point. I'm forced into it. I love how yellow those chairs are in the Oval Office. Not in the Oval Office, but in the White House, okay? What? I've always noticed them. I noticed them under previous presidents. But now, look at how unbelievably yellow they are.
I had not noticed that.
Okay, but what I like is, he talked about how she's good on a team or something along those lines. And apparently, she's decided to take her talents to Los Angeles and will be joining the Lakers with that outfit. Oh my God. Okay. No. By the way, it's not a comment about her outfit. It's just a coincidence that the outfit and the chair happen to make the Laker colors.
I see where you're going with this. Okay.
Okay. And the chair and Donald Trump's hair match to some degree. Okay. So now on to serious stuff.
This is the color theory of politics.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm just a color commentator on politics. That's all. Literally in this case. Okay. So. Is everything hunky-dory and she's had always planned to leave? Look, this is where our serious analysis, I hope, gives you important context. So, been covering politics for over 20 years. Every single time someone is leaving, they say, oh, no, I've been planning to leave all along. And the boss says, oh yeah, no, I knew about that. Oh, we planned this all the way a long time ago. Oh yeah, of course. And I'm going on to do something really important. So Nikki Haley, what are you going to do? Nothing. Okay, so
little wrinkle.
Okay.
So I agree, but we also, in comparison to previous people who've moved on from their positions in his administration, some of them have found out about it while reading Twitter on the toilet. Like they're very shocked to find out that they've been fired. He clearly doesn't want her to go. They're not fighting. We've heard no reports that they're feuding from the mole in the White House. So I think that makes it at least slightly more viable that this has been planned. I'm not saying I believe it because I think he's a liar, and there's no way he'd admit that he didn't know.
No, 100% not planned. And let me explain why. So this is the most important part. No one leaves an administration with less than a month before an election, unless it's acrimonious. It doesn't mean that it has to be acrimonious between Nikki Haley and Donald Trump. It could be, as we're going to discuss in a second, Pompeo and Bolton, etc. But that is a terrible time to leave as a matter of politics and optics.
Yeah.
It seems like it's in disarray. Someone is leaving, wants to leave the administration. Now, what do people normally do? They leave after the elections. That happens all the time. After the midterm elections, the other Democratic and Republican presidents, people who had been planning to go, or even might have had a little bit of acrimony behind the scenes, but they keep it together before the election and they leave after. Leaving 27 days before an election?
Yeah.
Oh no, hell no, that was not planned. Something went terribly wrong.
Yeah.
So my best guess as to what went wrong is, we're gonna discuss a couple of different theories here as to why she might be leaving, but that she laid down a threat and said, if this doesn't happen, I'm gonna leave now, which will look bad before the elections. that bluff was basically called. And so she's like, all right, then I'm gonna go before, not after the elections.
Then why doesn't he seem filled with spite and rage?
Because it's not about him. It's about the other players within the White House. He kind of likes them fighting. Remember, he's the reality show of former politics. If she had insulted him, no, then it's a totally different thing. She gets fired on a tweet out of nowhere, and he says, oh, yeah, she had problems, strong problems, right, et cetera. No, it's not about him.
You know, China.
Yeah, I had to tell her what Russia is, but that one I know really well. Okay, so you're right, on they seem fine, but her and other people clearly do not seem fine inside the Trump administration.
So we are gonna break down some of the theories about why she left, the political sort of calculus here. Before we move on to that though, I do wanna ask you a question to the substance of her time spent as the UN ambassador. So when I found out that Nikki Haley was moving on, I largely felt, who the hell cares? Like I don't think, God knows how much autonomy she actually has. She's undercut constantly by Donald Trump when she pushes for anything that doesn't fit in with his worldview. I think that he's surrounded by other voices on foreign policy. They're absolutely detestable, even more so than her. And on certain issues like with Iran, she's pretty horrible anyway. So my question to you is, did it matter that she was in that position? And will she be replaced by someone who's worse? So substantively, what was the Nikki Haley effect? Okay,
that's a great separate conversation, and to that I would say she had zero effect. There's conservatives who are against Trump today saying, "Oh no, Nikki Haley is leaving. What a shame." Yeah, if you're not a neocon, it's totally irrelevant. So she's a neoconservative, or certainly allies of neoconservatives. They're going to miss her because she would stick up for Israel's right-wing government under any and all circumstances, would make preposterous claims to defend them, etc. So she's a deep right-winger. If there's a difference between her and Bolton, it is only a matter of degree and maybe of personality and an internal power struggle, but they're all headed in the same direction. So I don't shed a tear at all, because there are some people in the White House and in the administration who are a stabilizing effect on Donald Trump, such as it is. And you think, well, maybe that's not such a bad thing. It could be worse than maybe John Kelly, who's chief of staff, right? I mean, it's a low bar, right? But it could be worse than John Kelly. Nikki Haley, what difference does it make? They all hate the UN. She hates it, Trump hates it, Bolton hates it. They all want to make sure that the Palestinians are crushed, and the Human Rights Commission is crushed, and any program that helps anyone else in the world is crushed. So it makes no difference at all.
Do you think, so the one case that people generally will make where she seemed to have a pretty different approach than Donald Trump at the very least was in Syria, where she was more willing to be critical of the Russian support for the Syrian dictatorship. Did that seem to matter at all?
Yeah, I actually think on that issue she's slightly worse. Now, why do I say that? Now, I think he's corrupt and working with the Russians, and obviously there's big points of disagreement on that, but I think he's knee deep, neck deep with the Russians. So I appreciate that she's a check on that, but policy-wise, he wants to go and interfere in Syria less. She wants to interfere in Syria more. She's more of a neoconservative, wants more war, more bombings. She's worse than Trump on that. So like all the people who are crying, like Ben Shapiro and other conservatives today about, oh, Nikki Haley's leaving. Well, they all want more war. So I think Trump's guilty on working with the Russians, but that's a separate issue than policy. In terms of policy, no. If it was up to the Nikki Haley's of the world, we'd already be in the middle of a disastrous war and civil war in Syria, and to some degree we already are, but it would be far, far worse.
Okay, so yeah, I was curious how you'd come down on that, because like I tweeted this morning, just like, I don't care. I understand that anytime someone leaves, it's this big thing, like so many people have left and everything, but he wields so much, like unilateral power, like he's a proto-authoritarian. What the hell does it matter if she's there? And
what was she going to do? Stop him from something?
She's gonna take a principled stand. They pulled out of major portions of the UN while she was in there. Like, was it really different than if John Bolton had been there?
Well, look, this is why the mainstream media, I think, at a bare minimum, leans right and right-wing establishment, and that is why today the right-wing establishment and the media is shocked and chagrined. Because if you got Trump out of there and it was like Pence was president as an example, and the Nikki Haleys of the world were running things, the media would be like, hurrah, Nikki, it's just, she's a stabilizing influence and blah, blah, blah. No, it just means she's establishment. And the establishment loves war, hates the rest of the world is too strong, right? But the neocons, that is a wing of the establishment, don't care about the rest of the world, and they will do anything and everything to protect certain countries, but definitely not others.
Yeah.
So that's why they're all crying, and in that sense, the establishment is a little worse than Donald Trump. So in other senses, Donald Trump is way worse. Okay?
I defy you to think of one.
Okay.
Okay.
But in foreign policy issues like this, Nikki Haley, I would argue, is worse, and that would be sacrilege on television. Right now, everyone on TV is crying.
Yeah, well, I've always felt that she's the Susan Collins of the UN. So moderate. So moderating. Okay, I'm gonna jump ahead to graphic 11 as we move into the explanations. So Nikki Haley has left, and there's a lot of questions and theories about why it is that she's moved on. We've been debating that here. Before we get into some of the quotes of people predicting it and who might replace her, one interesting thing is her popularity. Despite the fact that she has served very closely with Donald Trump for a long time, lasting longer in his cabinet or in his inner or middle circles at least than some people. Back in April of 2018, a poll from Quinnipiac found that she still had a 75-9 approval rating among Republicans and a 55-23 rating among Democrats even. That is a very popular Republican, despite the fact that she has been serving with Donald Trump. So there are a few theories. One of the big ones is some sort of internal either power struggle or philosophical set of agreements between herself and one or more other people working in foreign policy in the Trump administration. Generally the names that come up are John Bolton or in some cases previously with Tillerson, but then Pompeo later on. And so one of the quotes we have for that is coming from John Hudson, who said that Haley had an increasingly diminished role as Pompeo filled the Tillerson vacuum. Bolton asserted himself on UN issues, and the US began withdrawing from key UN institutions and programs, chipping away at her clout. Haley's influence at UN was blunted by Trump policy decisions that many other nations opposed, including recognizing Jerusalem as the Israeli capital, cutting aid to Palestinians, and announcing a US withdrawal from the UN Human Rights Council. Notably, Haley supported those moves.
Yeah, okay, so half of that makes sense, the internal fighting. The other half is the kind of thing that reporters write in Washington that actually has no effect whatsoever. And it's maddening to me that in some ways, it's almost naive, to be honest. Okay, so she didn't have enough clout in the United Nations because we were ostracizing ourselves from the rest of the world, and so that bothered her. No, it didn't. As he said at the very end of that tweet, she supported every one of those moves that ostracized us. She is an enthusiastic supporter of killing the Human Rights Commission, not participating in it, protecting Israel's right-wing government under any and all circumstances. I mean, you name it, an atrocious right-wing position. She loves it, supports it full-heartedly. Like, you think that she's bothered that that the Palestinians don't like her as much, or France does not give her enough clout in the United Nations? She doesn't care about that at all, not 1%. It's a preposterous thing to even discuss in light of her resignation. Like, did Nikki Haley resign because she was worried about what Indonesia thinks of her? Really? Okay, no, that's not the answer.
That's not it?
No.
Okay, well, let's move on to other ones. So one of the big theories coming out of her resignation is that Nikki Haley might be looking to other political offices, and either she wants time to build up a donor base, make connections and all that, or she feels that it's good to get out of the Trump administration before things totally explode all around him. But they definitely believe that this is about some future run. And the most immediate one that many people have theorized is that she will challenge Donald Trump in a primary in 2020, which, considering how collegial their parting was, seems a little bit unlikely, but she wanted to get in front of some of those theories, and you'll see that in this video.
For all of you that are gonna ask about 2020, no, I'm not running for 2020. I can promise you what I'll be doing is campaigning for this one. So I look forward to supporting the president in the next election.
So look, I think that if your theory was by 2020, there will be an open Republican spot to run for, okay, maybe, I doubt that she's planning for that. But the idea that she's going to run against Donald Trump, I think people are way too quick to assume that that sort of primary challenge is going to happen or go anywhere.
That's another establishment mistake. And so they think that everybody thinks like they do, which is they think Donald Trump is abhorrent. To be fair to the establishment and the mainstream press, they do think that, right? And so they assume that there are reasonable Republicans and that those reasonable Republicans could appeal to the reasonable Republican voters and overcome Trump in a primary. What planet are you living on?
What percentage of the voters is that?
Yeah, no, the Republican voters are overwhelmingly in favor of Donald Trump. They're not anywhere near reasonable. There are no moderate Republican politicians left at the national level. Nikki Haley certainly is not among them. So she has great PR team. So that's why she's got the awesome poll numbers. And plus, it's the horrible shape that the Democratic Party is in that they let people like Nikki Haley be popular when she's a warmonger, an isolationist, etc. But they barely laid a glove on her. And so she's got a 75% approval rating when in fact her positions do not remotely match the positions of the American people. But
well, Republican approval rating, to be fair.
Yes, those are Republican approval ratings. Yes, that's very important. But even so, but she's not gonna run against Donald Trump as he sits today, right? So he's very popular within the Republican Party, had better even approval numbers than Nikki Haley, etc. So now, could she be calculating and maybe know some things we don't know about how Trump's gonna go under, in which case there would be an open 2020 field? Well, that's a different conversation.
Okay, well, let's turn to another direction though. What if it's the corruption? What if she's worried about some investigation coming her way? So news has been going around, and in fact, a big article about this actually came out, I believe it was yesterday actually, or the day before, but right before the resignation announcement. And that has to do with a number of free flights that she was given that people are pushing for an investigation of. In a statement, the organization Crew says that the $24,000 worth of flights should be investigated by the State Department's Inspector General. Reached for comment about this. Haley says that the expenditure, she says it's only worth $3,200, should be exempt from ethics regulations because of her personal relationship with the businessmen who paid for the gifts. Which seems to me, like I'm not an ethics professor or anything, that seems like the worst reason they should be exempted, because you have a personal relationship. That's the thing that creates ethical dilemmas. In any event, there's a list of businessmen and women you can see there.
So she's like, no. I've been in bed with these CEOs for a long time. So you pointing out my corruption now is kind of old news and irrelevant. So is Nikki Haley resigning because an ethics watchdog found $24,000 worth of questionable plane tickets? No, that is, for a Republican, that's not a scandal. I mean, in the Trump administration, they just promoted someone accused of rape, attempted rape. And he got the job anyway. They promoted him, firing someone over $24,000 worth of plane tickets. No, that is at best the beginning of a conversation. No one in the Trump administration resigns over that, not even close.
That doesn't get you half a Pruitt soundproof phone booth.
Exactly. I mean, look at what it took for Pruitt to resign. It was the plane tickets, the phone booth, the
moisturizer,
apartment. I mean, there was literally dozens and dozens of charges against them before finally they submitted. They like Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley's popular among Republicans. Over that allegation, look, if you're a reasonably uncorrupt administration, that would be a serious allegation, and Obama would have probably fired her before the afternoon was over, before Glenn Beck got on air. That's an old reference, okay? But under Trump, he's like, that's the feature, not the bug. So no way that was the reason.
Okay, well then in that case, before we move on to who might replace her, you implied that you had a theory.
Yeah, so look, in my opinion, there's only a couple possibilities here. So one is the internal fights with Pompeo, who's Secretary of State, and John Bolton, who's the National Security Advisor. So my top theory is that she laid down some sort of gauntlet saying, hey, I'm going to either have this level of responsibility, or you're gonna listen to me on this issue, or I'm gonna quit immediately and not wait till after the election, which is when people in her position normally resign so that it doesn't affect the election, so it's not embarrassing, so it's not a big controversy. Now, again, to be fair, those are in normal times. If Obama's UN ambassador resigned 27 days before the election, it would have been the biggest scandal of his 8 years. Under Trump, there's so many firings and resignations and scandals that this will roll off people's back, but still, for politicians, it's an unusual move, and it's a brazen move. So my best guess is she said, "I'm getting this, or I walk right now." And the Trump people were like, "Yeah, whatever, walk." Right?
Any idea what that was or would be?
No, my best guess is it's an internal power struggle because, as you mentioned earlier, John, Trump seems unfazed. If it was about him, he would not be acting that friendly.
That's a good point.
Okay, so it's got to be her versus Pompeo or her versus Bolton. Her versus Bolton is more likely because Bolton is a steamroller and he's a maniac. So and he was the UN ambassador earlier, and so I'm sure I'd be surprised if they didn't have conflicts over that. And it's not really, it couldn't be too much of a policy issue because she supports neoconservative positions. Bolton is definitely a neocon. He's one of the leaders of the neocons. So it's probably just a personal power struggle. The only other possibility is to be fair, 1.5. Okay, the half is what we mentioned earlier, which is she sees an opening politically somewhere, and she thinks, and she might know something more than we know about how bad, what kind of trouble Trump is in. Okay, so. For example, she talks to the Russians all the time in the UN, right? As Trump said earlier.
In China.
Yeah, she knows all the players like Russia, okay? I don't know if she knows something we don't know where she's like, after the election, Winter and Mueller are coming. So I gotta go, I gotta get out of here, right? So now that's the Chaffetz move, the Paul Ryan move. So I'm gonna move that up from half to a real possibility. And the third one is just, angling for a position that we're not aware of, or there's a controversy that is way bigger that we're unaware of.
Like an opening on The View or?
Well, so there might be a political position, but again, that would be weird timing because you'd have plenty of time because she's certainly not gonna run in 2018, she'd run in 2020 presumably. So you should have plenty of time to plan that. So that's a less likely option. But if she smells trouble, she might be just pulling the chute. So those are the realistic possibilities. And so this is, last thing on it is that it drives me crazy that there's like two schools of thought, neither of which are right in my opinion, normally in situations like this. There is the establishment which just gives you, and they might think different things, but they don't write different things. So I'm not saying that the reporters in Washington are completely naive. So they might be talking about, hey, is there a bigger scandal we're not seeing? But they don't write it down. So what they share with the public is, well, she might be having troubles with Indonesia and and et cetera, right? And to be fair to them, they mentioned the Pompeo Bolton possibilities, et cetera. And so they just give you vanilla and they don't talk about what the real motivations might be. For politicians, again, they're not emphasizing the weight of someone leaving right before an election. That is incredibly bizarre and would not be done for quote unquote normal reasons. I remember when John Danforth left as UN ambassador for George W. Bush. They clearly had huge policy disagreements to the point where Danforth, I don't think, liked Bush. I thought he was fairly clear about that, but he said his wife twisted her ankle. And everybody reported, oh, well, his wife twisted her ankle, that's why he's gotta leave. I'm exaggerating, but only by a little bit. She broke her ankle, but that's not why you leave UN ambassador. That's not why.
Broken, I mean.
And so,
yeah.
Okay, so they report that as if it's real, and it drives me crazy. So on the other hand, you have right-wing conspiracy theorists, and they're like, oh, it's obviously because QAnon has said this and that. And can we just find a middle ground where we're not credulous about everything the government says, and we don't have insane conspiracy theories about government officials, but say, hey, here's a politician who lies all the time because that's what almost all the politicians do. And they're not they don't come out and tell you the real reason why they resigned. When's the last time that happened? Come on, for God's sake, if you're a reporter. When's the last time somebody was like, oh yeah, me and Pompeo hate each other. He stabbed me in the back. I laid down the gauntlet. He wouldn't do it, so that's why I'm leaving. Never. Of course they're not gonna tell you the real reason, right? Yeah. So please, like, and they're on the ground. Dig a little deeper. Find the real reasons, and don't believe or disbelieve what the government says on its face. Look into it.
Yeah. Well, we should probably take our first break. When we come back, we've got an ad attacking Ted Cruz that is awesome.
You're gonna love this ad. Yes, we'll be back. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. A couple of quick comments for you guys, and then we got a lot of stories. Peter Hamby writes in on YouTube Super Chat. Nikki Haley was in a toxic environment with Trump running wild. It's a smart move to bail with how Trump has destroyed what democracy he found. Yeah, I hear you. It might be a smart, like I said earlier, she might be pulling the chute, and that might be a smart move. But I don't think that she really minded too much any of his antics. You know, one outlier theory is that she was the person who wrote the New York Times op-ed, and
it's possible.
So it is vaguely possible because it was a person with foreign policy experience, et cetera. But if that's the case, Donald Trump doesn't know it because otherwise he'd be furious. And she then knows even more that we don't know about impending disaster and hence pulling the chute before the elections.
And it seems inconsistent with at least the tone of that letter.
Yeah.
That you would just leave 2 months after it anyway.
Yeah. And you know, look, bipolar Colbert writes on TYT on Twitter, #TYT Live to talk to us then. And he says, nobody at the UN likes Nikki Haley unless you count dictators. But that would also be true of Donald Trump. So not much different there. Jessica Gazvoda writes in on YouTube Super Chat, everyone, your voter registration can expire. I did not know this along with many others. We all found out when it was too late in 2016. No one ever tells people that, so check yours. I appreciate that, yes.
I've also heard, I think it was Tennessee, people said that they did some sort of big purge. So you might wanna check to make sure that you're still registered. And a lot of states, today was the last day to register. I think one, it might be Missouri, is tomorrow. So, you know, if you haven't already registered, it is time to go do that.
You gotta do it, only 27 days left. If you want an easy way to do it, you can go to tyt.com/register. That takes you to a government website. You check off your state, and then you find out how to register. Okay, so please do that. All right, what's next, John?
Okay, well, the stakes in one of the elections, actually. Director Richard Linklater has stepped into the Beto O'Rourke Ted Cruz Senate race with an absolutely awesome campaign ad that, in my view, Beto O'Rourke should have filmed himself a couple of months ago and released. But let's take a look.
Somebody left something on my door the other day. It said, Ted Cruz, toughest Texas. I mean, come on. If somebody called my wife a dog and said my daddy was in on the Kennedy assassination, I wouldn't be kissing their ass. You stick a finger in their chest and give them a few choice words. Or you drag their ass out by the woodshed and kick their ass, Ted. Come on, Ted.
Political ad paid for by FTC PAC, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
That's so good. Ted.
Never gets old, okay.
So that's a character actor, let's see, Sonny Carl Davis.
Yeah, so about time somebody did this. And look, that's the thing about Ted Cruz is that he's a wimp. And we've said it about 1 million times. And the thing that a lot of Democrats don't understand, and apparently Linklater does, and so I greatly appreciate that ad, is that voters care about only a couple of things. You think they're tracking trade policies? You know, some voters who watch this show are, right? Because you guys care, you're smart, et cetera, and you might have a progressive point of view. But most voters look for strength and likability, okay? And so that's why Ted Cruz is saying he's quote unquote tough as Texas. But the reality is he's a total wimp. Donald Trump I mean, I don't know if you ever saw this old video. We used to show it all the time back in the day. We probably shouldn't, but Dr. David D. Schultz in wrestling, when John Stossel went to go talk to him about whether wrestling was fake, he did something he shouldn't have done, and he slapped Stossel upside the head. And then when Stossel got up, he backhanded him, right? And he said, that's an open-handed slap, boy. What are you gonna do about it? And that's what Donald Trump did to Ted Cruz. He said, your wife is ugly, and I'm gonna plant a story in the National Enquirer about how your dad killed Kennedy, and then I'm gonna talk about it on the campaign trail. I just slapped your wife and backhanded your dad.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do about it?
Well, why don't we show what he did? So first of all, just in case you didn't see it, we're not gonna show all of it, but one tweet, Lion Ted Cruz just used a picture of Melania from a GQ shooting his ad. Be careful, Lion Ted, or I will spill the beans on your wife. To this day, I don't think anyone knows what he's talking about there. But he also he tweeted out a photo of Heidi Cruz that he thought was ugly. Our current president tweeting out photos of people's wives that he think are ugly. And then about his father, said his father was Lee Harvey Oswald prior to Oswald's being, shot. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. What is this, right? Prior to his being shot, and nobody ever brings it up. They don't even talk about that. That was reported and nobody talks about it. Well, presumably when it was reported, they talked about it. But I mean, what was he doing? What was he doing with Lee Harvey Oswald shortly before the death, before the shooting? It's horrible. Yeah, so people think that like we're exaggerating over this. No, he called his dad a potential assassin. And let's see, so in response to his dad being attacked, his wife being called ugly, something spilling the beans, he has to summon all of his masculine testosterone, and then he produced this.
I don't get angry often. But you mess with my wife, you mess with my kids, that'll do it every time. Donald, you're a sniveling coward, and leave Heidi the hell alone.
So will you support him as the nominee?
I'm gonna beat him.
I love that pause. That pause is always great. Well, I'm gonna do a political calculation, obviously. And if I think it's to my benefit, then I'm, instead of throwing Trump under the bus, I'm gonna go, Heidi, here you go. Heidi ho, throw her under the bus. Okay.
See you, Dad.
Right, which is of course what he did when he famously, pathetically phone banked for Donald Trump. Oh, Ted,
yeah.
that sad little face he has on, that's my favorite thing in the world.
To be fair, that's his face.
Yeah, I know.
That's what his face looks like.
So he's a wimp. I mean, there's another word for it, and you know what it is in Texas, okay? So, and now he's trying to pretend that he's tough as Texas.
Oh
please,
my God.
Please. So look, to finish the thought about Republicans in general and elections in general, Hillary Clinton's strategy in attacking Donald Trump and what the Democrats often do with Republicans is unfortunately ineffectual. I wish it would work, but it doesn't work. So what do? They say, oh, they're bad guys. They don't like black people, Latinos, Muslims, etc. Right? Yeah, their voters already know that, and they don't. Unfortunately, history has shown they don't mind that. Okay, what they mind is weakness, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
So what Hillary Clinton should have done to Donald Trump is what we try to do, which is call him a loser, which is what he is. Bankrupt 6 times, pathetic figure, had to borrow money from his dad over and over again, would be nothing without his daddy, a spoiled little rich brat, right? That undercuts his strength. That's 1,000 times more effective. Now in this case, Ted Cruz, oh, he's a bad guy. Dude, everybody on the planet knows he's a bad guy. All of his voters know he's a bad guy.
Heidi knows it.
His dad knows it, okay? That's not the issue. The issue is he strong or is he not strong? And the reality is he's a beta.
He's tough as pudding. That's
Yes.
what he is. And so I want to, really fast, I want to do a tale of 2 debates. So a tale of 2 debates in terms of strength. So they were supposed to have 3 debates. I covered the first with Brooke a couple of weeks ago. There was supposed to be another one, it might have even been tonight, a town hall. Beto is going to do it. But there's not gonna be any Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz backed out, okay? That's weakness, and I hope Beto will point that out. I don't think he will because of the other debate in this tale of 2 debates, and that was the first one. And Beto seems really good on a number of issues. He's good in general, but he had many opportunities to attack Ted Cruz and he refused to. When they brought up these things about the wife and his dad, he was super nice to him. At the end, when they asked him, can you say one nice thing about the other candidate? he went first and said something super nice that undercut his other attacks against Ted Cruz. And then Ted Cruz turned around and talked about him being a radical socialist that sure, some people like in Venezuela, but I don't think in Texas. And so he came off to me as a person not willing to not even be dirty, but just be honest about the weakness of this man and how bought he is. We saw that during the last primary. And so my concern is that while Director Richard Linklater will make ads like this, Beto, he seems to be more focused on just showing that he's like a cool guy who you agree with on the issues, which again, like you said before, I wish that was all it took for you to win a Senate seat in something like Texas, but I don't know that it will.
If I had the opportunity to say something nice about Ted Cruz in a debate, and I have challenged Ted Cruz to a debate, and let me quote Ted Cruz, sniveling coward comes to mind. He did not show up to my debate either. Here's what I would say about him. I'd say, no, you gotta be fair to Ted. Ted has been great to Donald Trump after Donald Trump insulted his wife and said his father was a murderer. And I think the fact that he could get past that speaks really well of him, and that he still has maintained his relationship with his wife and his dad, despite the fact that he seemed to betray them in order to get political favors from Donald Trump. I guess that's a person who can just get past being slapped around by a better man or a bigger man, a stronger man. But hey, at least he knows his role. Yeah. That would be my answer for what I like about Ted Cruz.
Yeah, or I appreciate a guy who will defend those who support him. Like, yeah, okay, he didn't defend his wife, he didn't defend his father, but corporate interests that have paid for his career thus far, he will defend them at every turn.
A great answer. Say, hey, look, I know there's one thing you know about Ted Cruz. If you give him a lot of money, he will do favors for you. If you're in his family, 50-50. Apparently less than 50-50, right? But the Robert Mercer and Rebecca Mercer that gave him $13 million in his primary, those guys he's actually loyal to.
Yeah.
And now remember, Beto does not take corporate PAC money. So that's why that line of attack would have been great. This is an outside PAC, and they obviously didn't check with him because Beto's unfortunately way too nice. And he would never have approved this ad.
Yeah, Beto needs to metaphorically break a skateboard over the back of Ted Cruz. That's what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid he's not going to.
Man, it's gonna be a tight race. Election night, November 6th. TYT.com/live. Conservatives are either going to be jubilant or despondent.
Yes.
And so are we. So only one way to find out. We'll see you there. Remember, the 6th of November. Okay. All right, we got a lot more, including one of my favorite stories today, the new conspiracy by Donald Trump on Democratic protesters. And I'm pretty riled up about that one. So we'll do that when we return.